Okay, traveling with Kyle. I left off in Ushuaia last time. Ushuaia is a pretty town. It's like southernmost town in the world. It's probably the same altitude as like northern Denmark. It's a beautiful little town. It's just like right next to these mountains. Like it's so far down south, I guess the timberline is so low that these mountains, they look like big mountains, like rocky mountains and everything. Should have climbed it. Would have been a cool climb. But then on the other side of like the canal or whatever, or the inlet, it's actually Chile down there. So I guess as soon as Chile puts this town there, I guess Chile will have the title as southernmost town. But I have kind of a funny Ushuaia story. I have a friend who told me that he was in a hostel there, and like some kid like came in, was like totally bedraggled and exhausted and exasperated, and they're like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "Oh my God, cook me food and I'll tell you." And I guess he got there and like he did the tour of Antarctica with some like 20-year-old Norwegian kid named Jarly, and who had like a 20-foot long boat, and like as soon as he got on it, he like regretted it because this boat kept almost flipping over and sinking, and he had to sleep on like a tiny little wooden floor that was only big enough for him and the other guy, and like water kept splashing in, and once they almost burned the whole boat down, and they got stuck like behind a glacier, a moving iceberg in the mainland for like 3 weeks, and almost got crushed like underneath this thing, and then he like freaked out and thought he was gonna die if he stayed with this guy, so he's like just drop me off in Antarctica. And he's like, no way. He's like, so he had like escaped like swimming across the water and got to some like abandoned hut and like broke it down with a rock, and like all they had was a sweater, and he's like freezing to death, and he picks up the radio and like miraculously got somebody to come down there and save him. So if anybody knows if Jarly ever survived. Anyway, so then so I left Ushuaia and I went back across Tierra del Fuego. It's called Tierra del Fuego, Land of Fire, because the Indians used to burn it, have fires going all the time, so they wouldn't have to put clothes on. So, but there's actually an interesting story too. Like I guess down south there, and it's an interesting part of the world. I've talked to like bike tourists who tour down there and said it was so windy that they'd be like riding sideways and be like sliding sideways across the dirt road, and that this guy, bike tourist guy, came across some other bike tourist who like gave up riding and was like hiding behind a tree, like whimpering because he couldn't even ride at all. Because like I went to this place called Rio Gallegos town, it was ridiculously windy all the time. It would drive you insane. Like if you threw your jacket up, it'd fly like 100 meters before it hit the ground. It was like, but as soon as you go down into the town, because it's like a city with buildings, that like you'd be protected enough to not go insane from all the wind. But yeah, because it's just totally flat. It's like Australia. And Australia, I forgot to mention, but Australia was really windy like that too. And it seemed like most of the time I was riding into the wind. But I kind of liked the windiness in Australia because it wasn't as bad as in Patagonia. Like in Australia, I remember getting high out there in the wind and just feeling like I was like in this dreamland, like, you know, the wind like. There's a funny story in Australia too. When I was in Australia, some kid got lost. He was like some missionary kid who was just went out there on his bike, and then he disappeared. They found his bike, and I guess he just walked off by himself into the outback, and he was like eating cactuses or something, and they found him, and he'd lost like 30 pounds, and he was like just sitting there like starving to death, but they picked him up. But anyways, yeah, so then I took the bus from there to, I can't remember what it's called, El Capete or something like that, some other town in Argentina, and then took the tour in to see some glacier. I can't remember what it's called, Glacier El Moreno, I think. And it's like up until like 1988, it was like the only glacier in the world that actually was growing, because because I guess there were some other glaciers that like something melted, you know, from global warming or something, so it allowed this other glacier to come and jump on top of the other glacier, so it pushed the whole glacier down. And like it's this huge lake, and so it came and it hit like the rock, so that it kind of blocked off the lake. And so like once a year, once every 4 years, it would like break down. The whole thing would just collapse, and it causes huge stir, and like people would see it. But like yeah, we were there watching it, and like every 15 or 20 minutes, you'd see a piece of glacier like as big as a bus break off of it and crash into the water, and every like 30 seconds, you'd see a little piece. And just looking off into the glacier, off in the distance, like 13 miles. And this thing was like 120 miles long, but like 13 miles off into the end of the mountains there, you could see the glacier like with the big, you know, waviness of the ice. It was really cool. And fun to like hike up on top of it. So, but it was weird riding the bus out there. I was the only person on the bus. It was really expensive too. It was like a 4-hour bus ride, and it was like $75. Like, Argentina was really expensive, like twice as expensive as Chile. That was right before the devaluation, when the dollar was the same as the peso. Then I went back to El Cabete or Carrete or something like that, and I bought like two like boxes of like white wine. I got way too high. I mean, way too drunk. And I like went, and there were all these like Argentinians sitting in some tourist place, and I barged in there, and I was all like, "Where's the weed?" I was like yelling at them for like 20 minutes, and they're all just like this. And then I went home, and like I just blacked out, so I was like afraid of wine after that. I was telling some kid at the restaurant next day like how Argentinian wine sucked. He's like, "Well, don't drink the cheap stuff, man." But anyway, then I took the bus, and I went up to Peninsula, and I saw these whales. It's like the only place where these one whales hang out. I can't remember what they're called, but they were like the only kind of whale that when you kill them, they keep floating. They don't sink. So they were hunted almost to extinction because they were so easy to hunt, because they would harpoon it and kill it. And then they'd go and harpoon another whale, and they'd just kill all the whales, and then they'd go back to the original place that they killed the whale because they knew it would float. And so then they would collect them, and they used to get all rich off of these whales. But I guess if it's this bay now is where they all go to mate. And so we saw these two big whales just like floating there with this little baby calf whale underneath. And they weren't afraid of the boat at all. It was really cool. And then we went out to the far end of the peninsula, where we stood on top of these cliffs, and actually at the one point I actually hiked down to the bottom and got right next to where it was just thousands and thousands and thousands of walruses just soaking in the sun, and also sea lions, as far as the eye can see also, and like interspersed would be a bunch of dead walruses and sea lions. I don't know how they died. I guess they just like to die up on land instead of out in the ocean or something, or maybe they fight and get killed or something, but there are lots of dead ones too. But that's where they go and they film the killer whales, where the killer whales like swim up with the wave, inside of the wave, as the sea lions are sitting on the beach, and then they like grab a sea lion and pull it out, and then like, you know, let the sea lion try to swim back, and then they'll go way up in the air and body slam it, and then they'll like throw it up in the air with his mouth, and then hit it with his tail and watch him like fly like 100 yards through the air, and then it'll still be alive, but it'll like swim back home slower every time until it finally dies, and they eat it. But that's where they do all the filming of that. I didn't see any. I think I saw the fin of a killer whale out there, and so yeah, it was a beautiful place. And then hung out in some town for a couple of days that was on the end there. And I think there were other animals there, but I can't remember which ones. Then got the bus into Argentina, Buenos Aires, and there was this really hot girl I was sitting next to. He was chatting me up. Argentinians love to talk. Like they'll talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And then I went into Argentina, to Buenos Aires, but I guess that's the next video.